Welcome to Bromford and Hodge Ward Forum, meeting of Monday the 19th of June 2023. I'll just go through my name is Councillor Diane Donaldson and I'm here with my colleague, Councillor Majid Mahmood, for this online meeting. Right, I'll start with some introductions to the officers who we have present. Right, we have Neil O'Grady from the Community Safety Interventions Officer, Exempt Accommodation. Colette Campbell, Strategic Lead, Exempt Supported Housing. Jugiet Manku, I hope I pronounced that right, working with the Exempt Accommodations team and Resident Participation Officer. And Chris Hamilton, Community Safety Partnership Manager. I'll just read you the notice of recording. I advise that this meeting will be recorded and that a copy of the recording of the meeting will be available for future record via the Council's YouTube channel. The main agenda item this evening is exempt accommodations, Tesco begging and antisocial behaviour issues. It's regarding ongoing concerns raised by residents regarding inappropriate behaviours by occupants of some of the exempt accommodations and properties locally. I did invite Tesco manager to come along, but he's on holiday, unfortunately, and wasn't able to find somebody to take his place. Councillor Mahmood, you've got your hand raised. Do you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was just going to ask, do we have a representative from Tesco present?
No, the Tesco manager is actually away on holiday. I did ask for another, if they could find a representative either from the store or from the main office, but no one has come forward.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. But all the issues we'll report back to the manager at Tesco's and take it to the head office after this meeting. Okay, well, without further ado, I'll invite Colette Campbell, the Strategic Lead on Exempt Supported Accommodation Housing. If you could give us an overview of exempt accommodation in the city and in Bromford and Hodge Hill, that would be put it into some context.
Okay, all right. I wasn't prepared for that, but hey, so we go.
Okay.
Well, we have the largest plethora of exempt accommodation in the UK. I think everybody's aware of that. So we've got about just under 9,000 properties within the city. And we, the team that I represent is a multidisciplinary partnership which involves community safety, adult and social care, planning, revenue and benefits, and waste management, and adult and social care. So we've received funding from the Department of Housing, and local communities, in respect of making sure that we respond to complaints and we raise the standards of accommodation within the city. So when we go out, we will actually look at what the support has been provided, issues about antisocial behaviour, property standards, and whether there's any planning breaches. We will also look at the support that's been provided, and we'll liaise with our revenue and benefits team in respect of explaining whether we've found that the support doesn't meet the housing benefit regulations, or also speak to providers and managing agents about the support they're providing and what necessary actions need to be taken. There's a lot of information in respect of the inspections that we've conducted. We've been able to improve standards, property standards, in respect of the 2,000 properties that we've inspected since 2020. We've also worked with community safety, which I'm sure Chris will be able to, and Neil will be able to provide some more detail to. But at least half of the complaints that we receive are of an ASB nature. And we are working hard very hard to work with providers and managing agents in respect of all the issues that then spill out onto neighbourhoods. In respect of Bromford and Hodge Hill, there are a total of 129 properties within this ward, which amounts to 310 people in accommodation of this kind. It represents 1.4% of the total amount in the city, and we've conducted 30 inspections as a result of complaints within this particular ward. So it isn't an area that comes on our radar very often. And I think that's it, unless you've got any questions. I mean, there's so much to what we've been doing.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, you've
okay.
just caught me.
Just to give that's fine. Yeah, it's just an overview.
Okay.
Thank you. Somebody's raised a hand here, and I can't.
It's Fahad's raised his hand.
Fahad, yes, would you like to come in?
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to know. I'm Farhad. I'm the direct neighbour of number 18. I just wanted to know. Did you say in the ward, so in the Hodge Hill area, you haven't had much complaints, or just the actual property that in question today, at number 18, that we're
No, this is the actual ward.
Oh,
So
yeah,
the
yeah.
ward itself.
Do you have on hand on how many complaints that number 18 has in particular? Number 18 and number 22 over the past 4 or 5 years.
It's 18 and can you give me the address, please? 18 and
18
22.
Brockhurst Road.
Right, because I believe there's only one property that's exempt, but
At the
if
moment,
you-
it was, but before that, right now we don't have an issue with 22. But but what it is, I live on number 20, and on my side of the road, basically they go up in twos, and so 18 and 22. I'm number 20. I'm sandwiched between the two of
in
them.
the middle.
And they used to both be supported accommodations in it. That's why I was going to ask, and like I was going to ask also like how many sort of complaints, because you said something about Hodge Hill, not. I think you were talking about the ward in general, and I just wanted to know
Yes, I was talking about the ward.
how many in general, like for the two properties, how many have you received for these? Because the truth is, as neighbours, we don't even know where to direct our complaints completely towards. We're having issues where that, only like maybe about half of our complaints going towards the police, half of them going towards the council, half of them going towards the the MPs like Diane and Madge, and there's a bunch of people in the council that we're speaking to, a bunch of people in the police, and obviously we haven't got a proper timeline of it all. And we want to basically make sure that everyone's sort of involved and everyone has the full picture of when a complaint goes out. Because in a year we're probably we're probably putting out over 20 complaints, and only maybe 3 or 4 of them have gone to the police, and 4 of them might have gone to the council, 4 of them might have gone to Madge or Diane individually. Do you know what I mean? So we just want to make sure that they're all being received in one sort of place that everyone can see. The amount of issues
well,
that.
if you send them to us, because we've been out of the loop before, we wasn't
Yeah.
aware, and it's only just started back recently, because going back a couple of years ago, we intervened and we held, it's more than a couple of years, it was pre-pandemic and well before that as well, had meetings with the operators at Ishmael's house, and and then we didn't hear anything about it. It all seemed to calm down. That they got rid of the persons who, the perpetrators, and everything went fine. And then now we're just, recently hearing that things have gone back to how they were. I'll just bring Chris in because I think he might have something to say on this.
So, as I know, Colette will vouch for, across the city, across the whole of England, we've got these exempt accommodations coming through, and unfortunately what you don't always get, because they don't require any planning permission, you get them, as Alan will know, you get them landing in your neighbourhood, and next thing you know, you're getting a call from complainants or local neighbours, and then Alan and his team won't know who's living there. A lot of the time we don't know who's living there. Thankfully now we've got intervention officers from an exempt team who actually do know who's living there, and Neil will come in later. But the whole point of it is this type of accommodation is accommodation that is provided alongside alleged care and support and supervision to help people live independently. I don't think anyone's against that. Really, I don't. That's the principle of it all. whether we're talking HMOs, houses in multi-occupation, whether we're talking about hostels, approved hostels or licensed hostels, or whether we're talking about exempt accommodation, the kind of collective message is that we're trying to help people come away from vulnerabilities and poor backgrounds to make a life for themselves by placing them into accommodation where it's felt it will kind of move them on in a very positive way. Now we know, Colette, Alan, myself, some of the other practitioners, and Neil especially, will know that that isn't the case. That isn't the case. We've got a lot of people who have jumped on the bandwagon around these types of properties because, as it stands at the moment, they aren't regulated they aren't regulated in a very good way. And that's what collectively Birmingham City Council, along with elected members, are voicing their opinions and building up an argument to take to central governments around why these properties shouldn't be licensed. That's the bigger picture. That's the massive picture that will take, I'm sure, a number of years to actually figure out and ultimately get that kind of regulation in place. In the meantime, people like Martin, Colette and her team, and Alan and his team, we respond like we have done tonight. We respond to complaints from the local community, residents, elected members, and ultimately what we will try to do is collectively work with you to address the situation. But don't think for 1 minute that it's just easy to close these places down. It's not. You can't just close them down, although we've got the premises closure order legislation. What we have to do is work with them. We have to work with the landlord, or in this case, some of the people in the front of that, which is the providers, the managing agents, and the whole industry is littered with irregularities. Right from the type of person that's being put into the property, and we've got no control over that, right through that to how they're managed, right through the way in which they're regulated. So you can imagine the huge undertaking that Birmingham City Council are trying to do at the moment to try and force the government's hand into making this particular industry far better regulated. I know we're here tonight to talk about 4 properties, and Neil will kind of talk about them as we go further forward, because we do have some information around them. But we do take on board. I work with Alan and I work with his team, and I do know that we try to identify and resolve matters as best as possible. What we won't do is move everyone on. That's just not within our kind of gift at the moment, because if you move everyone on, that just makes the situation even greater, because then you've got a number of people who then go on to being homeless. So it's a vicious circle. To some degree, it's a vicious circle. But I do understand the concerns of local communities, and we will try to kind of assist where we can.
So just to clarify, that HMOs, houses of multiple occupation, aren't the ones that usually cause the problems. It's you usually have the exempt accommodations that provide the support where we usually have the issues. We don't have a lot of those in Bromford and Hodge. HMOs are regulated by the council, and we do have a register. So we're trying to determine what the 4 properties are in Brockhurst Road. I don't think some of them aren't registered, so they might be just private rentals.
I think Neil will come in with that in a few moments, as I'm sure Colette might, in regards to what sits behind those 4 properties. And as you're right, you're actually right. There's a mixed bag. There are different ownerships, different status. I think 1 out of the 4 is exempt, but I'll let Neil kind of expand on that when he comes in.
Farhad's got his hand up.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to clarify real quick. I just wanted to say basically what I meant to say by that was that, you know, over the 4 or 5 years that we've been having these issues, the reason why we're not all in the loop is not anyone's fault in particular. It's just that it was new to us, and you know, we would either send complaints over to the police or we'd send complaints over to different parts of the council, and then you know, of course they would get individually responded, but They wasn't all in one loop. Just recently, now that we've also had sort of a CC of we've sort of CC'd everyone, and now everyone's sort of in the loop. But that's why, in terms of evidence of a long timeline, like building up a timeline, what I'm saying is that we don't really have in that sense. That's what I was saying. I wasn't really trying to go for someone or anything like that.
I think we've got better. I mean, I'm in the loop with Alan and in his team. I'm in the loop with Environmental Services and Colette's team. So collectively, yes, you absolutely are right. We don't want 5 responses. We want one response with 5 different opinions or 5 different takes on it. That appears in one response because we all have a duty. We all have a different responsibility. We work in different sections, so we're not all responsible for antisocial behaviour in this case. Some of us are responsible for looking at the hygiene and state of and condition of the properties. Some of us are looking at how it's regulated and whether the support aligns to the vulnerability of the individuals. So there's a multitude of partners that sit behind a lot of these situations.
Is there anyone else from the Brockers Road residents here that would like to? Ishmael.
Hi, my name is Ismail. I live at 24 Brockers Road. You mentioned that obviously you're acting on the complaints that you're getting, but the question I'd like to ask is, how come it's taken you so long for us to speak to you now? Because these issues we've been having on Brockers Road for 8 years. And obviously we complained a lot to our council. There's only so much they can do because their hands are tied. But what you just told us earlier, regards to how your systems work and how you home people, we already know that. We want to know what's going to happen going forward, because our area is actually ruined because of this. We moved into Hodge, especially Brockers Road, but I'd give up all his life savings to live here. For 13 years, this area is absolute mess now. It's shocking how Tesco's not turned up to this meeting, because they're part of the problem as well. But what we want to know is now, firstly, how come it's taking so long? And secondly, what's going to happen? Because I understand totally what you do and why you do it. We agree that some of those people need help. But it's proven now over the last, at least, I don't know, of at least 8 years now, that the properties in Bromford, especially the ones in Hodge where we live, are not being supported correctly. But yet you keep on giving these people opportunities to put people living who've got severe mental health issues, who've got addictions of all kind, some people who shouldn't even be living in these properties. We only can tell you, like Majid and especially Diane, the kind of complaints that we've have put to them. Some things are shocking. Next door to me, the one that closed, which Diane and Majid helped, and he got changed around, was we had people urinating in bottles of in bottles, throwing them into my garden. We had people excreting in bed sheets, throwing them over my house. We had people fighting the other day. And we only recently had a property, the number 18, for the second time, been vandalized. I mean, like, how much are we supposed to go to before anything's done about this?
Yeah, I'd like to just come in now if it's okay. Is it possible for us to get a response from the community safety team first? Because I think what we need to identify is, one, are all the issues related to supported exempt accommodation, or is it a mixture of things? And maybe West Midlands Police can help with that, and from our own investigations. It's just, I think it would be important to understand who is it that's causing the problems. So I don't know is it okay for Neil to come in, because somebody responded.
Maybe he can throw some light on which properties and what they are exactly.
Yeah, because I think initially you have to identify the status of each property before. Yes, we know individuals come from these properties, but they're not all exempt. So we'll hand it over to Neil.
Hello, sorry about that. Yeah, specifically talking about action going forward with the exempt itself, which is the 18. It's logging any ASB, evidence it if possible, because if you want a closure order, which is difficult to get, I think we've only ever got about 3 in the whole of Birmingham on exempts off the top of my head, and they were really problematic, hostels and whatnot, where people really wanted them gone. But any videos or pictures or anything, I know it's a lot to ask, but we need to prove that it's this house causing concerns. That way we can go down enforcement options. We can give the managing agent, CPW, CPNs, that kind of thing. Try and hit them where it hurts in their pocket. That way, they might want to just close up shop if a closure order isn't something we could get. Because at the moment, I don't think it'd be quite impossible to get a closure order on this house because we haven't got enough evidence of the ASB there itself.
Hello, Sergeant Cows. Can I just come in on that? In relation to number 18, we have checked it regarding any issues reported. At the moment, there's very little issues actually being reported or documented. I'm aware the incident happened 11th when the windows got put through. I'm aware the ASB, we as a team do potentially monitor the area, and we've actually spoke to residents, we actually mentioned across the road as well. But I've said to everybody, if you don't record it, we can't actually try and get through to it. I got a closure order when I worked in Sparkbrook, and it took me best part nearly a year and a half, and it's hard work. On paper, it looks really easy, but because we actually had the evidence to put towards the courts, they actually assisted with us, and then we had to work with them to make it happen. Like I said, we could probably look at ASB trying to get a control measures around the address, but we just need to find who's actually doing it. And I understand the residents' concerns, because a lot of stuff does happen after 11 o'clock, where we try and work overtime to try and combat it as well. You know, Tesco's, you could argue, it does actually draw a lot of issues around it regarding the begging and so forth. We do actually try and manage it. But I will say, with limited options and teams I've got, I do tend to struggle, but I do try and get it sorted. At the same time, we do have to actually speak to the person who's running these establishments, actually to understand who they're letting the property. Are they taking responsibility for the people inside the address? And are they actually making efforts to prevent it happening?
So, Farhad, you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, sorry, I was just gonna basically say that you know, what Neil said about, you know, they don't have enough evidence, and yourself, Alan, that said they don't have enough evidence. That's what I was gonna say. Over the 8 years that, I think it's 8 years now, it's been that long, I can't even recall. But we've, you know, the emails have gone out. It's just the fact that it's gone out to a few different people and a few different emails, and they've sort of got lost because we're
I
speaking
think
to
that's where the problem
different people.
lies, because I mean, going back, well, I've only been a councillor for 7 years, so I think when I first came in, I was aware it probably started around that time, and
Yeah.
we did have an intervention. That's when we became involved, but then it sort of died a death. We didn't hear anything, so it was just, that was put to bed basically. It was resolved at that point as far as we were concerned.
To be
but
honest,
I think individual people have been writing to this. There hasn't been a continuum. It hasn't. We weren't aware of your. So it doesn't. If you flag it up with Birmingham City Council, it doesn't automatically. We're not made aware of it. So if you come to us initially, then we've got the timeline then of things that happen. So I think there's been sort of a breakdown in communication, different people reporting different things to different people.
Yeah,
so,
no, that's all I was basically saying. I think it's not that what I was saying is that it's the evidence has basically gone to a few different people. So that's why we haven't got like a complete picture of it all. That's what I was basically saying in it. But
so we have carry on with what you've been doing now, and it's coming to us, and we're aware of it, and you know, everybody's in the loop. So,
but I just want to make clear in it that the issues never did stop. The only time they did stop was when the house was eventually closed down because of the violence basically that was going on. There was a lot of violence going on, and I think it was something to do with the nonce hunters or something. They came down, and there was a lot of vandalism and a lot of violence at 12 midnight in it, and the house got completely shut down. That's why we had about I'd say two or 3 months of peace, and then it just opened back up again. And we're neighbours. We're still in the dark of as to what happened and why it was closed down, because we've heard a few different things on the reasons of why it was closed down, or if it even was closed down. Because from certain councils, I'm sure we've heard that it wasn't even closed down. They just basically decided to close it down for a bit to cool off a bit. But then someone else has told us that it got closed. It actually got closed down, and they were told to close down, and then they were going to see if they were going to let it open up again. We don't even know exactly what went on in that property.
is that the exempt accommodation property?
That's the exempt accommodation we're talking about, yeah.
Councillor Magic has got his hand up. Magic.
Chair, I think Dan was before me, because on the chat it shows you who raised their hand first, and he's down as number 1 and I'm number 2. So can you get Ismail to talk first, then I'll come in.
Yes, certainly. Oh yeah. Now,
Hi, Dan. Yeah, well, if what Faisal brought, sorry, Fahd brought the issue regards to the complaint stopping. It's I'm in between the property number 22 and obviously when 18 was the issues we were having. All the neighbours are having problems with those houses. The reason we stopped complaining was because nothing was happening. Because all we seen was the council was trying to do things, and they would come to meetings. We know they got limited powers anyway. There's only certain things they could do. But because we knew that there's only so far is going to hit a brick wall, we just stopped complaining. Which Fahd will tell you the same thing. Everyone on the road will tell you the reason we stopped complaining wasn't because things got better. It's only because nothing was happening. We had realised that we'd exhausted as much of our resources as much as we could, and the councillors, how much more can we tell them to do? Because they've told us until the law changes, there's not much like Diana and Madge could do. So you pushed as much as you could, but because the providers, they were giving this beeline all the time that, oh yeah, we're gonna put a new person in, put a new person here. What you don't understand is which we're gonna, there's people on this chat with will know this as well. You live in an area predominantly schools. You got kids around this area. You got people who got alcohol, drug addictions, walking on the road topless. All these social, whatever antisocial behavior happens, it happens during the day, not only at night. But the problems we're having is we got schools down the road, 4 of them. We got elderly people, vulnerable people living over the road. And this is one of the reasons we brought up this issue at the start. But because in the end, because we went on and on and on about it, we actually stopped. We realized we've hit a glass ceiling and nothing's going to happen now. And then in the end, number 22 that was next door to us, because of the umbrella company itself, some issues they had with their, I don't know, their license or whatever, it was revoked. Then it got closed. Then a new company come up. They were planning on doing the same thing until we had a good conversation with them, to be honest with Fahd, I'll tell you, whereas they understood what we were going through. So in the end now, number 22 has been used as an office. It's been used basically as a headquarters where they do all their paperwork. So there's actually only workers that be in that property now. So that's the reason why that stopped. But regards to the first property, all that happened was we were told, from what I heard, was they're in a cooling off period because of all the trouble that was going on. As soon as this started again, we had the same problems again. We only had one of the people living there shouting at a woman that was walking past our houses all the day carrying a child. So these are the kind of things we have to deal with on a regular basis. These problems didn't actually die down. The reason we don't want to stress you out anymore was because we realized that you couldn't do any more for us because you had complained, you pushed it as much as you could.
We can, because we can put pressure on the providers. We need to make a combined effort. We need to, the police to be in the loop, everybody to be in the loop, so we can, act as a collective.
But to be honest with you, Diane, that was where we were trying to, because we got that desperate that we started contacting members of the council as well. We started going in different directions, and we realized in the end, because we weren't going anywhere, because we couldn't have a meeting like this, more than 5 years ago. We got in a situation where every time we spoke, nothing. Someone said, "Yeah, we'll sort it out." Nothing ever happened. Then in the end, we just give up. To be honest, that's the reason why.
We can chase it up and put pressure on.
Yeah.
Anyway, we are where we are, and let's work forwards and see if we can find.
You are right in that, Leandro. If I just say one thing, if I add one thing, I think the entire sort of mood in this meeting has shifted a bit. If we're all honest with each other, the truth is, when these meetings did happen, right now in the meeting, when there's a lot of people here, everyone sort of has a can-do attitude about it, saying that we can get stuff done. But really and truly, when the meetings happen between me, Ishmael, and I'm not going to name names, but certain other people here, we haven't had a conversation with, they're saying that we can't do anything about it. And it's a bit, and I just wanted to add that, you know what I mean? It's a bit, I don't know, that seems a bit, hypocritical to me, if anything, you know what I mean? That when we're alone and we're asking for help and, we explain the problems, they're saying that we can't do anything about it. Now everyone's saying that we can do something about it. It just seems a bit hypocritical to be honest with you.
I mean, our powers are limited, but what we can, we can do things. But let's see. Councillor Majid's got his hand up, so I'll bring him in now.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, this has been running for a significant period of time. Residents have been raising concerns on a periodic basis, and I do fully understand why sometimes they feel nothing has been happening. And the truth is, if you're a resident who lives in between number 18 and 22, or if you're a resident that lives in the shouted housing complex, which is for vulnerable adults that we have, then we have failed them. We have to be honest with ourselves. We haven't managed to get to the solution. And the truth of the matter is, if you look at number 18, from the outside, that's been built has a housing complex for people to live under exempt accommodation. It's not built as a family home. You can have a look at all the properties on Brockhurst Road, and going back to what Ismail has said, Brockhurst Road was one of the premier roads in the ward, if not the city, and it's been let down by 2 properties. This is the bottom line. People have spent a considerable amount of money, life savings, to move to this area, and we have been let down by the fact that there is national legislation that does restrict our rights. We know this, and Chris is nodding his head because we've discussed this in the joint partnership meetings on a monthly basis in terms of what to do with Brockhurst Road. The difficulty has always been that you get tenants, bad tenants. A lot of them get shifted when people do raise the issues, we take them back to Chris and his team and to the local police. And to be fair, where the local police and officers have been able to support us, they have. Those tenants have moved on. But the truth of the matter is, it's a temporary solution because they'll move on, complaints will die down, but then it only takes another month or so before the complaints start again. I've been having issues from that particular property, and I've had the waste prevention team, just in my role as cabinet member for environment, to go then speak to the tenants about them just using the street bin, which is opposite, as their own collection bin, when it's not. It's a street bin. It's for pedestrians who are walking, for their small wrappers of crisps, etc. It's not to be used as a refuse collection. A number of years ago, I think it was 2014-15, we did a considerable amount of work with the local police. I think it was Sergeant Russell Webb, one of the best officers that I've had the pleasure of working with. He was based in Chardin Police Station, and we had similar issues that have been raised here and in the previous years at the old Bromford Racecourse pub. And that was the first pub that West Midlands Police were able to obtain a closure order on the basis of continuous antisocial behaviour. And where you see the pub, it's a detached property. There's no houses next door. What I can't understand, and I know resources and people have said in this meeting that it's so difficult to get a closure order. We got a closure order on that pub on the racecourse, the Bromford Racecourse pub, which was causing similar issues that have been caused from emanating from number 18 Brockhurst Road. And the difference is number 18 is actually the issues raised there are much worse than the issues that were raised at the racecourse pub, simply because you got people living next door when you haven't got people living next door to the racecourse pub, because it's the last property on the left on Bromford Drive. And here at number 18 opposite, you've got the sheltered housing scheme, which are city council tenants who are all over 65, possibly I think 55 now, and some of them have got vulnerabilities. There's we get, I mean, I'm not, it'd be great to hear from the police the amount of instances they've had report in terms of drug use outside the Tesco. That's why I was really eager to have someone from Tesco here today, because they stay open till midnight and they've got security, and they also need to play a part in some giving back to the community as well in terms of social responsibility. They've got the area outside. Myself and Diane, 2 weeks ago, we cleared the part on Brockhurst Road, which actually belongs to Tesco, because it's been left there for like months now, and we just got fed up with it and we just cleaned up, because it's, as far as I'm concerned, there should be zero tolerance. So if a place has got a graffiti, if there's litter on the floor, it tends to make people treat the place like that. But coming back to this, I want to know today, we've got everyone here that needs to be in this meeting other than Tesco, and I'm sure Tesco, with their CCTV footage, all the incidents that I'm sure the residents in this meeting can log going back a year. We don't need to start a year now to log in. We can log back the incidents that have been going on. I can even go through all my emails, so can Diane, all of us, all officers. Why can't we now go and push for a closure order on number 18? Because that's the only way you're going to stop any antisocial behaviour emanating from that property. It's not a family home. It's built to house it's single people living there, because I think all of us know you can earn up to about £800 per room for that property. So if you've got, I mean, I don't know, one of the residents might know how many rooms are in that property. I'm assuming there's at least 6 rooms in there. So look, you can see how much profit the owners will be making from that. You're looking at £5,000 a month from there. That's more than what you would get in even if you had a commercial unit rented. So that's my question today to the police and to the officers. Why can't we now start doing the work? If residents are very supportive, they want to help. Myself and Dan are willing to give whatever information you need from us. Let's apply for a closure order on that on the property. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Majid. Yeah, and we also, recognise that all the issues tie in with the residents from these properties are linked into the antisocial behaviour that's happening at Tesco's. So it's all linked in the area. With that, I'll bring in Colette.
Yeah, I think the short answer to Councillor Mahmood's question is you need the evidence, and I'm still waiting to hear that all the information leads to number 18 that are causing all the issues, because at the end of the day, what I've seen is that the actual email says it's 43A, 39A, and 22. Within this meeting, I've heard someone say that 22 is used as a head office, and 18 is the main cause of the issues. But for us as a partnership, we've had 5 complaints that we've received. I've just had a look since 2021. I'm not aware of whether West Midlands Police have got any other information or any other part of the council have any other information in respect to that. But I know that I've been involved in a closure order on Hagley Road. The courts are very adverse to granting closure orders, and they're also wary of the fact that the people that are in the accommodation are vulnerable. They want to know what is going to be the options for them if there is a closure order, and the evidence needs to be robust, and that's what we're missing, I believe. I know it's not what people want to hear, but I'm just being plain and transparent. That's what we need for a closure order, and I don't feel we have the evidence to pursue that. So I'll be willing to be rebutted in relation to that, but my experience is we don't have the information to go ahead with it.
Okay, so in essence, we need to collate all the information that's been provided, all the reports and everything, so we can move this forward. Chris?
Yes. Yes, I want to bring it back, if I can, to the begging around the fox and goose. And I'm sure Alan will comment on that in due course. But just to support what Colette said is, yes, the legislation is there, and yes, we've used it before around premises closure. And again, like Colette, I'm being transparent with the consequences of a premises closure order is that you may well be able to close partial part of that property down. It's difficult, or in fact, if you've got evidence, you can close the whole premises down. The consequence of that is if you've got, for instance, in this case, number 18, that houses 6 individuals, it means that those 6 individuals have to be rehoused somewhere else. And that in itself can lead to a bigger challenge for the local authority. And just to, and kind of, we've spoken before this at length, the whole industry around exempts, HMOs, private accommodation, hostels, approved hostels or not, a lot of it isn't regulated. A lot of it doesn't require regulation. And yes, there is people sitting behind all of this who are possibly making a lot of money, and it comes right from those people who are allocated, even from probation, even from St Basil's. They all get allocated to these properties because they have met the criteria. They're vulnerable. Lots of them are vulnerable, and yes, they are put into neighbourhoods without any announcement. Unfortunately, that is not a requirement. They don't have to have planning permission, and they don't have to require a consultation with the local community to allow for these types of properties to be there. However,
if they're receiving support from Birmingham City Council, that element of support, and they're not providing it,
there is that, Diane, there is that, and that's where Neil comes in. Okay. From the exempt accommodation in regards to, and that takes us down another route, because we're not only then looking at the ASB, we're also looking at the individual who's allegedly providing the services there, and that sometimes can be a front for the person who's actually owns the accommodation. So very rarely do you actually get to speak to the individual who owns a property. You tend to get to the managing agents, who then subcontracts out to another agency to provide very little support. We absolutely know, everyone sitting here tonight, most professionals around this meeting tonight know exactly the gaps in all of this industry, but we can't plug them as a council. It's going right up to central government at the moment because it's nationwide. This isn't just Birmingham. This isn't just Hodge and Bromford. This is citywide. It's nationwide. It's a real issue. The councillors and elected members have been very good, as has the chief exec, in supporting Birmingham's battle against this. But as it appears at the moment, and I'll go back to what Colette says, you have to have the evidence, and even then you have to argue against the courts, who are very reluctant, knowing that, one, you are possibly dealing with vulnerable tenants or vulnerable people. Two, you're just displacing the problem because it means that it's going somewhere else. And three, there's lack of regulation. So as much as that sounds a little bit defeatist, I know that when I've spoken with Alan and his team and other sergeants, the very least we do is go out and we meet and greet the individuals. We talk to them, we try and engage with them, and we try and let them know what's going on. But to move it further forward and close the premises down is a challenge. It's not impossible, it's just a challenge with a different set of circumstances if indeed that property does close down.
Excuse me, just coming on the last, we've just checked our system. We've already had 3 reports of ASB from the beginning of this year. Got the disorder at the premises when the windows got put through. But apart from that, that's all we've got. We do speak to the residents. They tell us there's issues within the area. Again, I will repeat, we do try and manage that by actually patrolling the area. But again, we need people to actually tell us stuff, what's going on. Like I said, going web chats, telling the piece of stories. I know everybody's busy and you have problems probably getting through to the police, but you've got to tell us.
When was the last time it was vandalised?
I think it was the 11th of June.
Okay, thank you. I've got several hands that are going up now, so I'll take these quickly. I've got Councillor Majid and then Ishmael.
Sorry, can I quickly put something through? I just had sorry to interrupt quickly. I'm looking at the WhatsApp. We've got a group chat of the Brockhurst Road residents, and everyone's basically saying we basically want to push for this closure order, and we'll basically get the evidence. I'm sure everyone else is going to say that. I just want to make sure that was known. So whenever whoever else is going to speak now, so they can just basically address that. We're basically saying we can supply the evidence because we have 8 years worth of strings of emails. If we dig up, we can get the rest of the evidence in the emails. So we can supply the evidence as long as they push for that closure order. That's what we're really looking for on it. But yeah, sorry to interrupt again. I'll leave.
Thanks. That's not too bad. Majid.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, we can trawl through our emails, and again, I'll just put the comparator that we have with the Bromford racecourse. The ASB that was emanating from that premises, I don't think was even as bad as the ASB emanating from these premises. And if you look at the consequences of the actions of the tenants from number 18, we've as a council, we get a small budget of about £18,000. Well, sounds small, but it's in the whole scheme of things, it's quite small, just for housing land. And over the years, we've spent money on upgrading the lighting on the sheltered housing scheme simply because of the ASB that's been emanating from the tenants. Although we can't, show you a direct link, but we all know that it's the tenants from that property that were causing the ASB. We've moved one of the posts, we moved one of the gates, we bought it for. We've spent a significant amount of money, and for this closure order, which I think we should now push, we can provide the figures of how much money we've spent as a council to deal with the ASB that's happened on the housing land. In addition, if Tesco was here today, they would also tell you the changes that they've had to make to that part of their store where the vehicle entrance is on Brockhurst Road, in terms of they've got a dummy camera up there, the graffiti they've had to remove, all the rubbish that they've had to collect and stuff. Saying the city council, in terms of getting all the rubbish, and then if you add on that to, again, can't say there's a direct link, but the evidence points towards tenants that have been, the transit tenants that have been coming to number 18 are the ones causing antisocial behaviour at the Tesco car park. and across Bromford Lane at the Fox and Goose shopping centre. So if you link all of this together, surely an accountant can sit there and work out the cost of managing the tenants that have come. And I get what Chris was saying in terms of the government legislation says that the tenants are vulnerable, but why is nobody thinking about the vulnerabilities of the neighbours, the people that have to live through this? Surely that will carry some weight when we put an application for the closure order. What about the vulnerabilities of the elderly people that live in the sheltered housing accommodation scheme? I think one of the residents said that there's a WhatsApp group that all the residents have got. If there's a resident within that WhatsApp group who hasn't deleted his WhatsApp, well, I mean, mine get deleted daily because I get so many messages. If there's a resident there that hasn't, why can't we collate all of that evidence going back, say, 6 months? That's sufficient with the support of the two councillors, the support of Chris, because we can use all the minutes and the conversations that we've had in the partnership meetings. I remember it was just 2 months ago when we had a lengthy conversation about Brockhurst Road. We use all of that evidence, and then I'm sure the residents here, if they're willing to give statements as well, I'm happy to attend court to give the evidence in relation to this. And I'm going to tonight, I'm actually going to go through all my emails, see how many emails I've had. I'll print them off and I'll pass them over to the police and the council to put in the joint application. And you also have to consider this. I get what Sergeant Alan Keynes has said about specific antisocial behaviour reports to the property. People have given up. Some of the residents have said in the meeting that because nothing was seemed to materialise, because us as councillors have said that it's a challenge to try to get a closure on this property. People haven't actually been reporting, but it doesn't mean it wasn't happening. And my biggest fear in all of this is that there's going to be an incident on Brockhurst Road if nothing is done in the not too distant future, and then we'll all be coming back to a meeting and saying, oh, we should have gone for that closure order. So today I'm asking again, let's all work together on this collectively and push through this closure order. And as Chris has said, it's not something that just affects Bromford and Hodge, it affects the whole city. So let's use Bromford and Hodge has a test case like we did with Bromford Racecourse Pub, which everyone said to me at that particular point in time, oh, you and Sergeant Russell won't get this because you have to provide this evidence, you have to do this. But we did that working with the residents where we got statements and showed them all the emails and all the issues that were happening at that place. That was closed down. Since then it's closed down, it's now become a banqueting hall and we've never ever had any issues with it. And the same with Brockhurst Road, this particular property, like you get with when you give a license, just digressing slightly, but it's the same thing, and you can use this called when you get a license to sell alcohol in the premises. If there's instances there that happen, then more than likely it will get closed down because that premises then is effectively tainted because it's been used for that. Now, this premises number 18 is tainted in the sense that unless it's converted into a family home where you have a family living in there, you're going to continue having the problems happening. We may, be successful in getting the provider to relocate the tenants, but new tenants will come in and you don't get paid £800 per tenant per room because you've got a really good, no support is provided. So you get the money because you have to provide the support to the tenants. I think what's happening is the support isn't being provided to tenants across the city, not just in this particular. We're quite lucky in the sense that in Bromford Hodge, we've only got a handful of properties that are exempt housing where we have issues. There's other areas. I work in Erdington, Scotland Green on the doorstep where I work. You see literally half of the road has got exempt housing properties, and you see the issues that are there. We don't want the same to happen to Bromford and Hodge. So I'm saying, let's work together, and I'm convinced that we can get this seen through, and we could be successful in getting the closure order and setting a precedent for across the city. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Maddie.
Chris, can I just ask
an example? Can before I've got quite a few people with their hands up, but I've just got a question for Sergeant Keynes before we go any further. Speaking to Sarah Stobart, she said that residents aren't reporting. She doesn't have the evidence that the issues are being reported. So there's not enough people are reporting these issues. But I think what happens on Brockhurst Road, residents tend to, they all know each other, so it's left to maybe one or two persons to report the incident, so it doesn't on your system flag up as a hotspot. Would that be correct? So going forward, do we need to get everybody on Brockhurst Road to make a complaint? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think the fact that we patrol the Fox and Goose regularly because of the begging issue we've got around there, and Tesco's and the ASB, and we do generally patrol it on foot and by vehicles. Again, people will tell us what's going on. We will put information markers on. So if we could do a warrant and address virtual audit, but we haven't got information. Like I said before, I've done a closure order, and it was painfully hard to get a closure order just to get people to speak up. Can I ask Chris, have we spoke to the owners of the property in the first instance?
Alan, I was just putting a little thing on there just to support what you're asking, because as you know, it's about working with the managing agent, landlord, and to some degree those very tenants who are causing the problem. Neil's about the best person to come in on that one, Alan. Neil, because I know I think without, I'm not looking to kind of be negative. We've lost sight of those 4 properties, and when Neil comes in, he'll explain to you that these 4 properties are not all exempt. They're definitely not all exempt. 18 is the only one that's an exempt accommodation. So 3 of them aren't.
Let's bring Neil in, and then I'll take the questions from Ishmael and Fahad. But Neil, if you'd like to come in now, please.
Yeah, sorry, what was the question then? Sorry, my laptop's broken up a little bit then.
Neil, I was just saying that you've identified that out of those 4 properties, there's only one.
Oh, yeah.
That's exempt. All the rest, 2 of them are Birmingham City Council. As far as I understand, Neil, 2 of them are Birmingham City Council mature living schemes.
Yeah, this is the only exempt one. Currently, I know we're talking about gathering evidence and all this kind of stuff. I just wanted to bring up also, we've got a seconded police officer on our team, and I sent him over the tenants list for this property for an intel check, with regards to the begging, and none of these tenants have got any history of that kind of stuff. So if you're looking for evidence, it's got to be right. Obviously, I don't sit at the Fox and Goose every day, so I don't see the beggars. But according to that intel, none of these have history with that activity.
It may be there's links between their drug dealers and drug dealers that supply to the people in those accommodations. Hello,
Neil,
no, I
are
think
you
we've got
able?
Neil.
Diane, collectively,
Yeah.
I know the connection as Alan does. There's more than this property that's possibly connected to individuals begging around, and begging is just one aspect of this. If there's as far as I can see, there's two considerations here. I was saying that number 18 is causing issues locally, and therefore that can be evidenced, and therefore we can start to engage or look at something more robust. And then the bigger picture is obviously the street cohort, the begging, which citywide we are trying to manage as best as possible, but that isn't an easy thing, as I know Alan will allude to. But in the past, Alan's team have been very successful in serving what they call community protection warning letters and community protection notices. Now you're talking about a street cohort, you're talking about a lot of individuals who choose that lifestyle. Some of them aren't forced into that lifestyle, some of them choose that lifestyle. And as soon as you move one person on, they just move further on down the road, and then that place is taken over by somebody else. So it's a vicious circle. There is no, and I'll be absolutely upfront, there is no one answer to the current begging, street drinking and street cohort at the moment. Together with the police and lots of different agencies, we are looking citywide as to what more we can do. And strangely, it might not be a surprise to people, one of the things that comes quite clear, what kind of clearly comes out, is Alan and his team can move people on, but the public are very generous. And as much as it might kind of disturb the shopkeepers and some parts of the community, a big part of the community, especially in Washington Heath, continue to give money to these individuals, which inadvertently encourages them to stick around. And that in itself is an education.
Thank you, Chris. I'll bring Ishmael in. And Ishmael, can you give some clarification about the different properties? Because there's about 4 different properties on Brockhurst, and give us a background on those.
Yes, basically number 40. She mentioned number 43A and 39A, and Sergeant Allen. I've spoke to him about it because I'm the man you spoke to on the road. I live at number 24. So we the ones who usually put that to your attention once when I think you had someone pulled over. You had a chat to someone in the vehicle, and I had a chat to yourself and one of your colleagues about those 2 properties. Them 2 properties are elderly people who living in those properties. You know, the people they're selling drugs to on the road are using their houses to use their drugs in. We see that on a regular basis. So that's why I contacted you to go see them, because obviously a letter's gone to those people because they're complaining to other people that live in the supported accommodation, that elderly people's accommodation, that we're getting letters, complaints from councillors and the council that they're being threatened that if they misbehave anymore, they can lose their tenancy. But the 39 and 43A, they would issue with alcoholic behaviour, and the heroin addicts that were begging there also, that they were given the drugs, they were using those properties as a place to shoot drugs. Whereas the selling drugs and some of the people doing antisocial behaviour were from the number 18, in the property of number 18. But the question I was going to ask the sergeant was that this wasn't the first time this property has been vandalised. This is the second time this has happened. How many more times does this have to happen on this road for someone to actually do something and to actually close his property down? Because I understand you're trying to say we're going to get through all this, the information, we're going to collect information, all that. But we did that the first time. That's why this property was closed down the first time. And you gave it a 3-month cooling off period and all that. So we've got to go through that phase all over again. To me, this is like we're going round and round in circles here, because I understand you want to help these people. I totally understand. But as someone who's lived there for 13 years, these properties are the reason for all our problems in Hodge Hill. You know, my parents are so stressed out about it. Elderly people are stressed out about it. Me, you'll hear my voice and Diana might hear my email more than anyone else, because I'm an ex-council worker and I'm the one that usually does all the talking around here. So they contact me. And don't get me wrong, if these people actually approach you themselves one-to-one, Alan, you'd have a lot more complaints. But it's only because a lot of these people, firstly, when they do ring that, was it 11 or 101 or 101, that number that is, mate, I've had people waiting there for hours and got no response. So that's the reason why they've stopped that. But they've said now that because something's physically happened, not for the first time, but the second time, the first tenancy we had issue we had number 18 then, the vandalism happened, you done your checks, they went through all the whatever was happening at the property, the complaints, they closed it down. The fact that this happened a second time now, and you want to go through all that phase of getting information, all you got to do is look at the information you had the first time when this property was closed down, why it was closed down then. The fact is, we're going to the same situation.
Ask about the 2 properties, the 43, the other ones. Are they private properties, or are they council properties?
From what we know, they're council properties, because we've got contact with one of the wardens, which I spoke to, Sergeant.
In the sheltered accommodation.
Yeah, I've got contact with her now, okay. Because she's having to look after 5 different locations. So there's only so much work she can do. We only get to see her in only one of the carers. I find this because there's a carer who complained to me and told me what day that woman comes. She comes on a Tuesday between 8 and 1 p.m. Jackie, her name is. So I contacted her and I told her about the antisocial behaviour that was happening there. So all the people that are picking up drugs off these people, because not all the people in that, they're saying that they've got needs and all that. A lot of them haven't, because a lot of the young lads in that, there's a few people in that house, which Fahad, when he speak to him, he'll explain to you, because he lives next door to the house, they're more than capable of doing everything, because they're up to all kinds of things, the people that live in those property. I'm not going to accuse nobody, but we've seen it with our own eyes. So that's what Fahad will tell you himself. So that's another issue we're having. We had the same problem before, and we're having the same thing again. The thing that what is getting to me is that we had all this process we went through last time. When the property was vandalised, it closed down. The second time the property is vandalised now, so we've been told that we've got to get the background.
18. Yeah.
Yes, number 18. This is the second time this happened to number 18, and we've got to get the background information now again.
What type of closure? It was just a temporary closure. Or...
They did a temporary closure then for 3 months
what,
ago. We give them a cooling off period.
Yeah.
So with the temporary
So
closure.
it's
Oh,
not
the
resolving
piece we had
anything there. So you're looking for a permanent closure and to
a perfect closure.
reinstate the property as a family
The only time
housing.
Exactly. The only time you would ever hear from me, Diane, which you got to be honest, me and you and Madge, we have these to and fro's of emails, always because of these issues with these properties. I wish for once I could speak to you about, I don't know, let's cut some grass or something. Every time I'm an ex-council worker, I've got 18 years of experience working for a civil servant myself. All I ever talk about is these properties, especially this number 18 now, is that much of a problem. And I worry about my own family, children, and the kind of people like you admitted it yourself, you've got no control of who you put in these properties. We recently, a long time ago before, in number 22, we found the pedo hunters turned up, that's whatever they're called, and they found a pedophile in there. So you don't even know the history of the people you're putting in these properties. So what we're saying now is enough is enough. We've had enough now. And we're asking you nicely, please, to have properties been vandalized twice. If you need to get information, by all means, but we think enough's happened right now that this property should be closed down and our councillors can get on with other work they need to be doing rather than chasing after workers with these properties. There's other things we need to get on with at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, can I add as well in it that as a direct neighbour to 18 in it, I can personally, have a whole, I could probably fill up about 8 pages worth of statements of issues that we've had with the property. Whether it's been reported or who it's gone to exactly, I'm not too sure, but we can dig up all that stuff in it, where it's gone to, and I can provide that evidence. Just so I can mention right now, the sort of issues that I can mention is there's actively drug dealing happening in that house. I'm trying to say it's been used as a drug spot for, you know what I mean, actively, and that property is not being run properly. It's there's little to no sort of support that's gone into that property. There is we don't even know who, there's certain times that we don't even know who lives there. There's that many heads going in and out of the property. The other thing I was to mention is, if you was to imagine how it would be for us as neighbors living next to one of these properties when one of these incidents happen. If I put in perspective to the first time it happened, it was at midnight. It was around midnight or 1 o'clock. I can't recall exactly, but everyone was fast asleep. My little sister, she's her room is literally right towards basically, it's a detached house, but her bedroom is basically right next to the number 18. And what happened was she basically woke up to what sounded like gunshots, and obviously you can imagine the sort of stress, the trauma, and sort of PTSD that she got from that. She went straight, like she didn't sleep that night. You know what I mean? It's not sort of as a safeguarding issue to all the children. The police owe it to us that this issue is taken very, very seriously. That even though the one time it happens, it's enough. This property on a weekly basis is involved in violence. You know what I mean? And for us as neighbours, it's sort of impossible for us to sort of have off video phone. First of all, be home when the issues do occur, because we're working. We're working people as well. Do you know what I mean? 9 to 5 or 9 to whatever. We're outside working, so it's only like our mothers, our elderly mothers that are home and they don't even know how to use the phone properly. And you want them to start recording in the middle of the street these violent individuals. Then how do you think that would end up on a safeguarding issue for them? Do you know what I mean? It's unrealistic to say that I understand where you're saying that you need the evidence, but it's unrealistic for us to have our phones out and record these violent incidents whenever they happen. It's not like we plan them. We don't know when they happen. They happen on a daily basis. We're just going out about our lives, and we're seeing these issues occur. And as neighbors, we don't want to be, when these sort of issues happen, we don't want to be anywhere near them, because you know what I mean. We don't want to be part, like they're already violent as is. If we start recording, it's just going to aggravate the situation, if anything. Do you know what I mean? And again, like I said, what we can do is we can provide more than enough evidence of what already has happened. We don't need to wait on any more. Like, we haven't got like. I don't. From what I know, we don't have that many videos. We might have a few videos, but we don't have active videos. But we can provide statements of everyone across the road. So we'll have more than enough evidence. We'd have probably stockpiles of evidence in terms of everyone on the road, that in terms of just 18 alone. So evidence, it would not be an issue at all if that's the only issue that you're having with pushing for this closure. And I think as the councillor said, they're happy to push for the closure order. It's just that whether everyone.
going
yeah.
forward, we just need to collate all the evidence so it's coherent, and then go take it to the next step. Obviously, the operators aren't listening. They're not taking the residents' concerns on board. So an alternative route has to be explored.
I think that's where Neil comes in.
Yeah,
Diane,
Is Neil
around Exempt and
yeah,
ultimately talking with the exempt provider and also the landlord or owner in regards to potentially closing them down from an exempt point of view, not necessarily closing the property down, but ultimately, as Neil will tell you, and we've had some success with this, they just reinvent themselves weeks later under a different guise. And that's where the regulation unfortunately fails us.
but I know work is happening in Birmingham City Council, and that is going to government, but it's not happening fast enough. That's the issue. Right, Farhad, is that your legacy hand?
Yeah, sorry. No, I just wanted to basically say that, you know, I really believe that if we did want to, we could definitely move on. This is not the truth is, I understand as challenging as it is, there is no other option for us. That's the only last bit of hope we have as residents, because this property isn't going to improve. What ends up happening is that as soon as this, you have a word with them and they say they're going to sort it out, it doesn't. It's been going on for eight years. If they would have sorted it out, they would have sorted it out within the first year. Or it doesn't take that long to sort themselves out. Do you know what I mean? It's been 8 years and we were still having these same issues. So for us as residents, we have no other option. It's not as if we don't have that luxury. We can't move away. The only option is we'd have to move out the area. Do you know what I mean? And that's, us getting bullied out of our own homes, and that's not an option for us. And I don't think that's a fair option for us either. So I think definitely.
Is the operators of 18 and 22, are they the same operators or different companies?
What happens is, I think there's been 2 or 3 different operators. What's happened is, I think after the first incidents, they just change operators, but it's the same results. At the end of the day, they're not being run right. They're not. It's first and foremost, they shouldn't have actually. I understand there's no legislation or regulation on whether it should have opened there or not, but obviously, if you look at the fact is it's across the road from an elderly home, sort of sheltered accommodation or whatnot, and it's down the road from 3 primary schools, and it's on on a family residential road, and it's just causing the community. This one property is causing most of the antisocial behavior for this local part of the community. It doesn't make sense that how it's still running. Do you know what I mean? Like I said, evidence we have enough of. What we just need is, the support of the local police and the council to just push for this, and we'll get the evidence through. Because at the end of the day, there's nothing else we can do about it. We have no other hope. Do you know what I mean? We're living next to this. It's not like it's going to go away. I understand it's challenging, but this is the only solution. Because if they were to fix themselves up, they would have done that 8 years ago. And we've already had these conversations with them. It's the first time that they're going to get approached. They have been approached by councillors and by members of the council and all that. They have, and they actually once said to us as neighbours that they were gonna, not carry on with this, and they were going to turn it into a family residential home, which they didn't do. They lied about. They just said that so they thought maybe just to give us a bit of hope, and then they just carried on doing what they did. And I'd like to add as well, the people that actually run this property, I don't think they are the most straight people as it is, because every time the police does show up, they just disappear. They don't want to be anything to do with it. And obviously, we live in the area. We know. We know everyone sort of knows what, but yeah, I think that's all I like to say.
Okay, thank you, Farhad. Yeah, I think so. On the other properties, the ones in the sheltered accommodation, that's a different issue, but that can be approached from a different angle through Birmingham City Council and with the support of the police, because I think it's a different issue to what's going on at number 18. Maybe easier to manage. I'm not sure. Ishmael, you got your hand up.
Yeah, Diane, you know what it is? I think I'm putting plain English for you now, because I think we're going round in circles here. You know, by contacting yourselves, and Alan's listening to this as well as a sergeant, we're trying to save you a lot of trouble. We're trying to stop violence on our road by going about this the more professional way of asking you to close this. This property has been vandalized twice. That's the only thing people understand what problems this property is bringing to that area. By not doing what we were saying, you could end up making the situation even worse because, like Fahad told you, we know who the people are who own this property. They live up the road. We haven't approached them as a community, just so we'd rather you do it and close it and avoid us having to have a big problem on our road. Because what's going to happen now is very soon there's going to be a very big problem on our road now because this has been going on far too long. And you know what happens when you don't deal with problems? They get out of hand. That's what we're trying to talk to you now to help us, because this problem isn't a new problem that's been here for a year, 2 years or whatever, which Diane will tell you and so will Madge. That's why we're trying to ask you for help, to help us. What you're doing is you're sending us around in circles. And when, like Madge told you, when something really bad happens here tomorrow, then the onus is going to fall on you because you had an opportunity to close this property down and to save us all a lot of trouble. And we could just get on. I could told you we just want to get on with our own lives now because there's a lot of school kids here. There's a lot of people that witness things. There's a woman, I'm telling you, there's a woman that walked past that day with that pram and she had a child with her. And that young lad was swearing at her, saying stupid things to her. Yep. I had to speak to her husband because her husband's fiance is not the kind of guy you want to be crossing. And he was planning on going into that house. And we had to tell him, listen, we live locally here. Can you please, we avoided, we kind of pour cold water over it. They don't know that in that property because after I left it there. And what would have happened then, mate? Then it would have gone totally out of control. Because then, as neighbours, we'd just turn our head because at the end of the day, they've caused that problem on our road. And we're trying to avoid all this now by going the right way about it now, telling you the problems we've been suffering, not today, but for years now. All the way we